Can we really choose our own adventure on STARCREWSER? Let's discuss. So we are talking about STARCREWSER's story, which means that this is going to be heavy on spoilers. If you do not want any spoilers, go back and check our last two videos that were completely spoiler-free. On this one, we are digging into the storylines. And we actually have our very first guest on Princess and Scoundrel, an incredible person, a connoisseur of all Halcyon cuisine, one half of the incomparable duo that is Ordinary Adventures, and equally obsessed with STARCREWSER as the rest of us. It is Peter from Ordinary Adventures. Welcome.
Thanks for having me on. Yeah, it's an honor to be your first guest. That's really cool.
We're very honored to have you. I know we talk probably daily about STARCREWSER, even now,
yeah, we
a month
have a
after the fact.
STARCREWSER group chat. Yeah.
Yes. But you had the distinct opportunity to go twice on STARCREWSER. Can you tell us how that came about?
Well, I'm a Star Wars obsessive. Ordinary Adventures basically happened because of Galaxy's Edge. And became one of the big YouTube channels that kind of covering Galaxy's Edge. So when they announced the STARCREWSER was coming, we were super excited, and we started saving our money then. And when rooms became available, that's how I met you. And we were trying to get in for the first voyage. And we were lucky enough to actually get into the first voyage. And I was like, we get invited to some press stuff, but I wasn't going to assume that we'd get invited to STARCREWSER because there's only 100 rooms. And I assumed, Good Morning America and New York Times. I assumed that we were out of the 100. we were below that 100 threshold. So we booked that, and luckily we did get invited as press. So we got to go, I want to say 5 or 6 days before the public journey, but we also had the reservations for the March 1st voyage. So in the period of a week, we went twice on the STARCREWSER, and even though I've been twice, like everybody else that has been on it, I'm already scheming to go back.
Isn't that crazy? That had to have been such an intense week too, because it's a very intense emotional experience. And then to go back and do it 3 days later, it's oh, here we go again.
And you have that depression that you have when you get off it. Everybody I've talked to that's been on it, the next few days that they're off it, they have this depression of I guess it's called LARP bleed, or there's some kind of words for it and stuff like that. But where you you miss the people, you miss that world. But we were also editing. We shot 11 hours of footage, so we were editing that down to get that up. For our 4 videos, we have 4 videos that are about 3.5 hours worth of footage. So we got the 11 hours down to 3.5 hour footage, but we're editing this footage, crying as we're rewatching the moments of the. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the worst, not worst part of it, but it's different for a content creator to go on this, document it, experience it, and then you leave and you still have to sit with watching all of that footage again and going through it. And for what I do as a travel agent, I'm booking people on it constantly. So it's I can't let it go. It's a part of me now. But so you got to go into the media voyage completely blind. No spoilers existed out there. How was that going into that and really trying to figure out what storyline you wanted to go through and kicking that off?
It was a little bit scary because, I'm not a spoiler averse person. I'm okay knowing stuff. And for an experience like this, I'm sure there's a lot of people watching and listening to this podcast who want to know what's the right way to do STARCREWSER. Because if you're spending this much amount of money, you don't want to, pick the wrong path or do the wrong thing so you don't get the cool climactic scene. You want to not waste your shot.
Right.
And yeah, going in for the first time, not knowing what was going on, like, you know, we were going to our hotel or our cabin. We were getting put into our cabin, and we were staying with my friend Reza, was with Kitra and I, and he like saw one of those terminals, and he like tried to hack into the terminal, and then like we're like, at that time I thought that was just like for like I thought that wasn't even part of the game or part of the thing. Like I thought that was for crew or just to look whatever, and then. By the time we're at lunch, he's already getting like messages from Wraith, like asking him to like go to the engineering room and all this stuff. And I'm like, I haven't even, because we had to film like a cabin tour and all that stuff. So I hadn't even like engaged with anybody on the data pad. So like I already felt like I was behind because he was already getting missions, and I was like, I want to eat. I want to enjoy myself for 5 seconds. So, yeah, I think my experience on that first voyage is going to be kind of different than everybody probably watching this. So I'm going to say that first off. It not only did I not know spoilers, but I was there to document the experience. And I actually created this character. I was a war holoscan documentary. It's called holoscan. Who had documented the Galactic War, the Galactic Civil War. And so my films are actually well known across the galaxy. They're called A New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi. That was like the backstory for me. But my purpose there was I wanted to participate, but my purpose was more to like capture what was going on. So I know probably more people watching this are probably going to want to be more like I'm the character like in the Resistance, and I want to do stuff. And that wasn't how I kind of approached it per se.
That's interesting. I like that. Just kind of like sit back and watch and participate as you can, because that's a good way to go into it rather than like, yeah, I'm going to do all the things. Because like you said, I think we kind of felt like one of our friends had done the same thing where they tapped into one of those consoles and they came back at lunch and they were like, hey, if you go do this, this starts happening. And Wraith starts reaching out to you. And we're like, oh man, like we just wanted to eat lunch. Yeah. Like it felt like FOMO before it even started.
Yeah.
But I think that's one of the interesting things too, is it seems like that scoundrel path is the one that can get unlocked early. I don't know if any of the other ones can really get unlocked before that 4 p.m. start time.
Well, so do you think, because at the beginning there was the choice of you picking the 4 different choices, do you think that really just kind of put you in the bank of you're going to be a Jedi, you're going to get the Jedi stories, you're going to get the scoundrel stories, or did they just kind of take that into consideration into an overall story that you...
That's what I thought was happening on my first voyage, but I think my opinion has changed quite a bit on that. Actually, before we get to that, I wanted to ask you guys a question. Like, what's your opinion on like participating? Like, do you think someone would enjoy this experience just like, you know, if they had a son or they had a husband or wife who wants to participate, but they want to just like take everything in? Do you think it's worth it for them? Or do you think you have to participate and for it to be part of your story, like, you know, to be part of the story to get the fullest out of it?
That's a tough one, because I think you can, because the house scene's absolutely gorgeous. Like the cabin was awesome to hang out in. The food is like plentiful, and you could easily hang out in the Crown of Corellia dining room or the Sublight Lounge. But I think too, if you just kind of wanted to tag along with somebody else's story, you could do that. I just don't know, if you're not like a big Star Wars fan, if you're not going to have that overwhelming, like you said, LARP bleed afterwards. Like it's not going to make that big connection for you. But what do you think?
But I think that kind of helps the situation, because you have no expectations, right? You're just going to accompany the person you're going with, for them to have a good time, to see their joy. And you really, if you're not a big Star Wars fan, you don't have that expectation. You're just kind of, hey, I'm here for a show, whatever it is. So you don't know what you're missing, but you also don't expect anything out of it. So it kind of leaves it open for like, oh, hey, I actually kind of enjoyed that type of thing.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So
I do have a theory that I want to put out there before. I know I'm probably hijacking your question narrative, so I apologize. But I do think the more and more I think about it, I think there's 3 types of way to enjoy the Starcruiser. And I think there's one, the person who can just like, they watch the story. They watch like the, when there's the captain's toast and everything, the First Order boards and things happen. And like they're watching from afar, things happen, and maybe even watching as their group kind of participates. There's that enjoyment. And then there is a second level of enjoyment where like you are doing the data pad stuff. You're talking to people on the data pad. You're going on missions on Batuu, and that's, I think, does unlock more climactic events for you. Like if you don't do that, if you're on the path A where you're just watching, I think you still do get climactic moments, but you get more if you participate with the data pad stuff. And then I think there's a third kind of person who not only are you participating in data pad, but you are participating with the actors in a way that like they're, meet me here at 7:00 to do this mission kind of thing. And then they'll scan your data pad. And I even saw like a Tim Tracker video today where he shook hands with Wraith, and he seemed to believe when he did that that hooked into the M band kind of thing to put him in a storyline. So I'm not sure if that's true or how that works, but I think if you are on path 3 where you're doing the data pad and you're actually engaging with the characters in a way that gets you to be like actually doing missions with them and for them, like off the data pad, then I think you end up maybe even unlocking more climactic scenes for the end of day 2, if that makes sense.
I think you're right, because like Dano got to take part in the heist. I think you took part in that too, Peter. So he got to take part in the heist.
I did not. Reza did, but I saw some of it.
Okay. He took part in it, and then I think towards the end of that, Gaia came up to him and said, hey, only to Dano, and said, hey, meet me in this place at this time. You can bring a couple friends with you. And so he brought us along, and it was literally Dano and our little group. And we got to have this really cool experience in the cargo hold that nobody else got to do. But that's because he was, he showed up in like the Gaia's World Tour t-shirt, and like he went all in. He was that third path of like all the data pad, all the character interactions, everything. And so, yeah, I think if you're sitting back and you're just taking everything as it happens, you probably have a better grasp on what the big picture, the overarching storyline of what happened on Starcruiser was, but you don't get those little things. And I think that's where it kind of got like muddled for us a bit, is we had our 7-year-old son going off and doing missions, and then, you were doing other missions, I'm doing other missions. And so trying to come back to like be in similar story points together, I feel like our stories got muddled. Like I couldn't tell you from the beginning to the end if we helped Lenkamok in this way, like smuggling coaxium and installing it, doing all these things. Like I can't tell you what one helpful thing we did, but I know we did a lot of little helpful things along the way.
And then one of the, and I think this is where I kind of talked about the group situation, was Wraith basically said to meet in the sublight lounge and have like a napkin in your M-band, something like that. So you know what? I have the stroller. I get me a drink and I'm waiting sublight lounge, and I see him making his way towards me. But then there's also the group, I guess, of people expecting to, make contact with him as well. And I think once his group got big enough, then he basically diverted to whatever the next step of the story was. So he didn't even make it to the sublight lounge. And I think it's just to keep those experiences more intimate.
Yeah.
Kind of like there may have been more people at Sublight that were going to make contact with him, but it was just already a big enough group that he pulled him aside. Because I saw him heading that way, and I think Dano was with him, and there was already like a group forming. So I was like, okay, so I don't think he's going to make it over to me. And then sure enough, they went and did something else. So I didn't get to really see what was next. Although, again, I was with the stroller, so I don't know if I would have been able to, but it was one of those type of things. Like, even if I did want to be involved, I wouldn't have been able to make it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's...
And I think that's one of the things, too, is, like, they really tried to keep these smaller event or, like, these special moments to smaller groups. Because they would lock you out of something if you didn't make it in time. Mm-hmm. If either, like, bridge, engineering room, or whatever. So they really try to give those intimate moments and keep it pretty locked in, so it's not people just coming in and going.
Yeah, that's true. Well, like, Peter, I know you had told us before that you were like, I just experienced something that in a room with a dozen people, you're like, how is this possible? And now having been there, that was before we went.
Yeah. That was a Jedi artifact scene, which the heart. I'm not sure how much spoilers you want to give, but
no, we can give spoilers. This is a spoiler.
Yeah, on Batu, and the interesting thing was, I didn't do this mission on Batu, but the Reza, who is our roommate in our cabin, one of my best friends, he on Batu had to do a bunch of stuff, but he ended up scanning this Jedi artifact over by Savi's, and I guess in doing so, the Jedi artifact got put onto our transport onto the Halcyon, and then later we got invited. All of us got invited, even though Reza was the one that did it. So I'm still not clear how that works. Like, I'm still not clear if, like, you mentioned your son did some stuff. Does that, like, now add on to yours because he's in? Like, I'm wondering how that works, and I'm sure we'll find out eventually. But I'm so glad that Reza did this, because when I was on Batu, I was so frustrated with the data pad, because I don't know. I don't really like those data pad missions. Like, it really feels like you're not really doing anything. You're not interacting with any real people. You're, like, doing some kind of bad iPhone mini game. And I didn't really understand the story. I mean, my story on the first voyage, just to make it pretty quick to you, is because I didn't really have that much, because I was taking things in. I didn't have that many interactions, but one of my interactions was in the captain's reception. I got to meet Lenka Mock, and I was telling her that I had talked to her on my data pad and that I'm totally for the Resistance. And, when I go to Batu tomorrow, I want to look at the temple, the old temples on Batu. And she was like, oh, can you scan your M-band to my droid? And when I did that, of course, the droid transferred data, which I later found out through the data pad, that was like information for a Resistance base or whatever. That's the whole reason why the First Order wants the droid. And when I was on Batu, I had to go and actually transfer that to the Resistance so that they knew that, they had the information or whatever.
Okay.
I guess that's basically my storyline. Like, my storyline doesn't seem that exciting in the grand scheme of things, but I think what I found in my first voyage is, even though I didn't have this grand Star Wars storyline, I kept on bumping into it. Like, it kept on, like, on day 2, we had a bridge mission, which I'm guessing sprung from me helping the Resistance. My bridge mission ended with us actually getting Rey on board. We actually were the people that got her on board the Halcyon, because some other people sent a signal out to the Resistance that we needed help, and they sent Rey on board the ship. And once we got her on board on the bridge mission, I was talking to someone else, actually, someone who works at Lucasfilm, and they're like, well, if she's on board, she's on the ship somewhere. Because I just thought like, oh, she'll show up later. You know, she's not around. So I was like, if she's on the ship, where is she? She's probably where the Batu transport docks with the Halcyon. So we went down there and she was there and we had this whole interaction with her there. And like, I'm sure there was like a mission because there were so many people there. I can't imagine that they were there just by coincidence. Like I'm sure like Linka Mock gave them a mission to be there or like someone, you know, something happened. I don't know how they ended up there, but I ended up there because, you know, just connections. And, you know, I just happened to see like, you know, some kids free Chewbacca from the brig or what, you know, I kept on like running into storylines, if that makes sense. And that to me was as compelling as being part of it.
Yeah, we did too. It was like, I think we were trying to run back to the cabin for something real quick. And we were our cabin was on deck 4, and which is where the engineering room is, the dining room is, all this stuff. We would see like Chewie get thrown in the brig, Chewie get out of the, I feel like Chewie was always in the brig. Somebody was always in the brig. And anytime we were walking down that hallway, there was action. There was something. Like we would see Rey, we would see Lieutenant Croy, we would see the stormtroopers on one side of the hallway and the other, you know, the resistance trying to hide from them. There was always something to take in, which felt like, oh my gosh, it's really cool that all these things are happening. But it's like, but wait, what's happening over there? Like, I don't know that piece of the story. So when it all culminated into the finale at the very end, it felt like there were a lot of those little pieces that played into it and were called out. But if you didn't know about it, you were like, some of it went over your head completely.
Yeah. Well, because we didn't know Rey, or I didn't know Rey was on the ship until she was on the ship, like the final
the
scene,
finale.
the finale. And now I'd heard some kids say Rey was on the ship, so I was like, oh, okay. So I wonder if they're, I thought they were kids and they didn't really know what they were talking about. But that was what was going on. Same thing with
like the holocron.
The
you
holocron.
Guys had the holocron scene. And so when that showed up in the finale, we're like, oh, that's cool. But I'd never seen anything about that before. But for you, having experienced that, that's impactful because you're like, oh, I know what that is.
And that scene is so cool because not only is it an amazing effect created by Imagineering, but it changes Star Wars canon. It makes that final battle mean so much more because, you know, if the First Order wins, if Kylo takes over the ship, he doesn't just take over some Starliner. He now has Luke Skywalker's Jedi holocron, which has probably so much information. Like, do you know what I mean? Like that, like changes canon in a big. It is a. There's more stakes, I feel like, in that final battle, if you know that. And it's weird that so many people in that atrium for that final battle don't know it until someone mentions it and then, like, Yoda appears on the screen. It's kind of weird how it plays out in the final battle if you don't know it. But the fact that you are one of maybe a dozen or 20 people in that room to see that, and I have since learned that I think it happens twice. Most things on the Halcyon only happen once, or like you have a bridge, you know, mission, and the storyline is different from bridge, from bridge mission to bridge mission. That I think actually happens twice or maybe 3 times. So like it's not as like small of a group as I initially thought, but I was like, whoa, only 20 people get to see this thing.
But still, even then, it's maybe a 10th of the people aboard the ship, right? Because like for
it could
us,
be, if it's 3 times, it could be like 60 people out of 350. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
what
not
that
many.
is. But once, yeah.
Because we had that experience where we went to a bridge meeting. I don't think you had it on your itinerary, but me and our son had it on our itinerary to go meet the captain on the bridge. And we get in. You got in with us just because we were like, oh, hey, he's with us. And so you got in. We do the bridge mission with Sammy. It ended up not being the captain. It was Sammy. And we do that operation. He says, go meet me in the engineering room. And so we have that on our itinerary too, to go down to the engineering room. And it was like 10 minutes later. I'm in my like long gown because I thought it was going to be a formal night. So I'm like, I'm going to go to my room and change. I'll come back and we'll go to the engineering room. Well, by the time I come back, I think our son saw that another bridge operation was happening. And he's like, I want to go do that again. And so they were like, oh, you want to do this again? Boop. And then let us in to go do it again. And so instead of us finishing out that mission with Sammy, because by the time we finished that and went to the engineering room, they're like, oh, the meeting's already started. We can get you here. Come back in 30 minutes. And so like they literally told us like, you missed this one, just come back for the second one. And so we did that and we finished out the mission. And I think we did Lenka Mock both on the bridge and in the engineering room. So that had more of a flow to it. But yeah, if you just miss something, you could just go up and say, oh, hey, or you can be like, hey, what's going on in there? I'd like to go do that. And they'll be like, okay, here you go. So that's where to me, it was like.
But do you think they're going to tighten that up where they're not going to let people, because I feel that's where sometimes we experience different things like we weren't supposed to.
Yeah.
Because, and that's maybe what confused us on story, because you're like, wait a minute, like I'm doing this again. And now it's this, like it because we were getting into things that we weren't supposed to, we were unlocking parts of the story that didn't make sense. It was confusing to us because we were kind of going out of order.
Yeah. Did you guys experience that at all where maybe one of you was going on one path and the other one was going on another? Or did y'all just go do your own things and then meet back?
I mean, like I mentioned, Reza was part of that whole heist thing. So he was involved in all that and we weren't doing it, but he would be coming back so often and be like, oh, I just went to the engineering room and, he would tell us the story. And honestly, on that first voyage, that press voyage, I had a couple friends that were on that voyage because other press people. And that was probably one of the best things. And I highly recommend, if you're going on to StarCruiser, is to make friends with people. And it's very easy to make friends on StarCruiser because you all love Star Wars and you're participating in these things that are basically team building exercises where you work together with strangers and you end up becoming friends with these people. But make friends with these people because they're going to go off and do something and you can meet up with them later and be like, hey, what have you been up to? You'll be at the sublight and be like, what went on with you today? And then you get to learn a piece of their story. And then also, after dinner, there might be little pieces of things that you want to put together. So like, I feel like that is something I didn't really realize going into it, that you would want to talk to as much, because at first I didn't want to talk to other people because I didn't want to be spoiled, because I thought like, oh, if they had a bridge mission, I'm doing the bridge mission later and it's going to be the same thing. And I don't want to know what happens, during their bridge mission. But no, it's totally different. And it all kind of cascades into itself, if that makes sense.
Right. Yeah, that was what was surprising to me, especially for the bridge training, is that the bridge training had a purpose for each group that did it. It wasn't like lightsaber training where it was the same thing over and over. But yeah, that piece was interesting. But yes, that part I forgot. The first night at dinner, you get something with dinner, and we were fortunate enough to have a big group. There was 12 of us, so we were able to piece everything together. But if you're a smaller group, you got to work together. Like it truly was, as you said, like a team building to the extreme of all strangers. All right, for the StarCruiser lightsaber and more giveaway that we are running right now, the Princess and Scoundrel portion, and the phrase that you need to know is, I love you.
I know.
And if you want more details about the giveaway, stay to the end of the episode. But so, okay, to, I guess, kind of move on. You did get to go on the media voyage. Then you did go on a voyage within a week later. What learnings did you take from the media voyage into the inaugural voyage, the first voyage?
I think I took the wrong lessons, to be honest with you. I have not revisited the footage yet, but I think after Reza did that thing on Batuu and found the Jedi artifact and we ended up in the room with the holocron, I started to think that everything was run by the data pad. That like where you ended up is completely, everything's driven by the data pad. And I think that is completely wrong. I don't know what the percentage is, but I think you really need to go up to people. You really need to, and not just like, go up to Gaia or Wraith or whatever and just like have an interaction. But you need to have an interaction with them that tells them that you want to help them and what they need to be done, or like you need to offer your services, because then like, that second voyage I was on the First Order, which was what I was trying to do, because the first time we went Resistance, we were trying to do First Order, and I was actually kind of a little aggravated because on the First Order track, there's a lot less people to talk to. Do you know what I mean? Because like, it seems like everybody on the ship, including the scoundrels, are aligned with the Resistance.
Right. So
you basically can just talk to Lieutenant Croy. You can talk to the stormtroopers, but I mean, they're mostly pre-recorded back, so it doesn't really do much. So I don't know. So I was kind of aggravated in that respect, and I was just relying too much on my dealings with Croy on the data pad to like deliver more things. And I think I realized on day 2, which was too late, or not too late, but it was later, that I was like, oh, I need to be going up to Croy and being like, what can I do for you? What do you need to be done? Because when I started doing that, he started involving me. And then, he called me over to a terminal and he was like, well, here's a funny thing, because on the first voyage, I went up to Croy on the press voyage, and he got annoyed of me and he asked me my name, and I thought quickly and I said Reza, which is my cabin mate. That's not my name. I thought it was funny for the video, and I also thought it was funny to get Reza in trouble, and not me. So almost a week later, I'm on the second voyage and I'm helping him out, and he's like, Reza, come over here and put your M band on the terminal for me. And we had to explain to him that my name wasn't Reza, but it was cool that like a week later, he still thought my name was Reza, which is not on the reservation or, whatever. But having me put my thing on the data on the terminal, I think unlocked some extra scenes that happened that, on day 2 afternoon of, me helping Lieutenant Croy in the engineering room take over the Halcyon, and then immediately going to the bridge and, taking control of the ship, which was kind of cool. And I think I was only scheduled for one of those before. And I don't think, even though I had been participating in picking First Order on every single thing on the data pad and offering to help Croy in every way and denying to help any of the Resistance people, and even like the who's the droid inside the cabin?
D309.
D309.
D3.
Yeah. I even was like playing First Order to her, and even with all that, it felt like it didn't add up to much until I started like, I had to actually reach out to Croy and participate in that way, and that got me into some more climactic stuff. So I would suggest if you want to participate and you want to be involved and you want to get more stuff and whatever, you can't just like, go up to Gaia and tell her that you're a big fan. I mean, you can do that. Like, you can have the normal like character interactions that you would have in like Galaxy's Edge or in a Disney park. But if you want to participate, you actually need to like somehow hint that that you're at their service or whatever. And I think that adds up to something more in the end.
That makes sense. Because they may just be like, oh, I'm a big fan of Wani. But if you say something to Wani like, hey, I'm here, that's going to be the one that you're going to be the one that they're more likely to go to for help. So that makes sense.
Now, I remember Sarah mentioning that you had a friend that their mission was to do the Jedi path and do everything they can with the Jedi path and get those certain events, and they weren't able to. Like, do you think that's...
Yeah, they knew that there was some kind of like extra mission, that holocron scene that we talked about. And I think that was their goal to get to that. And I don't know why it didn't work. I don't know. I think maybe it was just them relying too much on just answering Jedi in the on the data pad and doing what the Shaja did on the data pad. I think you actually have to actually go up to them and be like, listen, I feel one with the you need to
Right.
play it up to them. And I think that adds up into something, although I'm not sure Reza did that. So I'm not sure how we ended up on that mission on Batuu for that Jedi. I can't trace back the steps, but he did not get invited to that thing. And,
But see, but isn't there two different Jedi events?
Is there?
Well, because there's the one in the climate simulator.
Oh, yeah, there's that one.
From what I understand, I don't know that much about the other one, but from what I understand, I think that is something that happens a few times during the journey. And the Saja will pick usually like a youngling who is showing, that they are one with the Force, to meet them in the climate simulator at a certain time. And I think usually, like, we've talked about like these events being like, that holocron event has like 20 people in there. I think the one in the climate simulator with the youngling, and they try to like force move some rocks and stuff like that, that's literally just the youngling and maybe their parents and whoever ends up having to be, like, if you just happen to be in the simulator at that time, you get to see it. But if not, like, it's not like a thing where a big group gets invited to it.
So that's just like a very special one-off, kind of like us meeting with Gaia.
Yeah.
That's so
Yeah.
cool.
But I do want to mention that, like, this friend that didn't get invited to the holocron thing, well, he I saw him on Batuu, and he didn't get the mission to scan the Jedi artifact crate, and he didn't have anything later from the day. And I was like, you know what? You should talk to, like, because there were some people on Batuu that were like monitoring all the like data pad stuff, like the concierge kind of people.
Yeah.
And I was like, you should talk to them. Just like tell them what's going on, that you've been like doing the Jedi. And he went to talk to them, and they got him into the holocron thing. So I'm not saying that everybody should do that, because that would suck, because then I don't think they can fit everybody into the holocron thing, like you said.
Right.
Like, but they're willing to make. I mean, you paid that much money. They're willing to try to make you happy as much as you can, as much as they can.
Oh, that's fair. I think that's what's going to be the fine balance of like, how much do they make you happy and just let you go do the things you want to do, versus like trying to really keep you on the story path that you were set out on. And I think that's where it's probably going to evolve as time goes on, because we're only a month into this. There's still like a lot to be worked out. So it'll be interesting to see what changes.
So for your next visit, what do you think you're going to do differently?
Oh, no. I don't know. I can tell you this. I've been consuming every piece of Star Cruiser content I can possibly do. I've listened to your podcast. I've listened to other podcasts, Thank the Maker, whatever. I've watched all the vlogs. And, my friend Tim, the Tim Tracker, he just went with his family, and I just watched their vlog today and saw scenes I didn't know had happened. Like I didn't know that like these things happened, and I've been there twice, and I still am seeing new things that like I didn't know were part of this. So I don't know what I would do next time. I don't feel like there's enough to the Jedi path, which is kind of sad, but the Scoundrel path sounds fun.
It was really fun.
Yeah.
Depending on which Wraith you get. And I mean, I'm sure they're all great, but like our Wraith was just like, he was Wraith Cole. He was not an actor playing Wraith Cole. Like people were just drawn to him because he was so good at what he did.
Well, and I think that's another part of it we're not even talking about, was the characters, how, like our Wraith, we loved our Wraith because he was just kind of that cool guy at the bar, and everybody just gravitated towards him type of thing.
First of all, we were watching Tim's video earlier, and he had our Wraith, and our daughter was like, "That's you, Mom," because we have the same hair. was like, that's not me. I was like, but thank you. That's a compliment. I'm sorry I interrupted.
So, but yeah, no, I think that's another part of it is just the characters. You know, our Lieutenant Croy he was more serious and old. Like, he didn't seem like he was going to be a fun character. And I mean, I guess he played to that strength. I really
liked him.
But, you know, because I've seen videos of other Croys and I'm like, oh, that's kind of like a cool, you know, kind of a Hux type of where he's not sure of himself type of thing. And again, they just play different characters, or they play the same character in a different way that could change this, you know, the dynamic of it.
Yeah. As much as I want to get the Jedi scene to see it in person, because we watched your video and like I almost didn't want to see it, but Steven was like, you want to watch it? And I was like, yeah, I do. And I'm watching it and we're like I'm crying watching it because it was just like, how did they do that? But I want to see that. But I also just kind of want to show up and be like, all right, Halcyon, what do you got for me this time?
Yeah.
Because no matter what you do, I think you're going to have a good time, right? Like,
I think that's another good tip, and I think you guys have talked about this before, is that like, or maybe it was the Think the Maker guys, whatever, like having a plan of going there and getting a certain path. And I think you really need to show up and like, you might need to know who your character is, but like be open to going in any direction, because I kind of regret like on our second voyage there, we got approached by Sandro and he sang a song about me. And like, I think he wanted me to be part of like his whole storyline, which is like writing a song to impress Gaia and then eventually impress, you know, Wani. And whatever. And I feel I regret kind of being like, oh, I'm part of the First Order, I'm going to go in the other direction. I could have done that too. Do you know what I mean? I could have done both of them. Like, it's just because I'm First Order doesn't mean I can't help Sandro.
Right.
So,
you can believe in love and the First Order.
Yeah. So I feel like don't put walls up. Let yourself open for whatever opportunity comes your way, because you honestly don't know how many opportunities are going to come your way. There's so many people there vying to be part of those, you know, 20-something groups of those moments. And, you know, I would say, you know, unless it's like something you don't want to be a part of, like you don't want to be First Order and then whatever, I feel like leave yourself open to those kind of things.
Yeah. I agree. All right. So I guess to wrap up, what one last thing would you tell people about starting your story? Maybe your favorite storyline that you did, or what would you do next time? Where would you go spend more time next time? How would you wrap this up?
I don't know. You would think after having been there twice that I would have like some kind of good sage advice, but I think my advice is very simple, and it's, you know, just try to be as involved as possible, not just on Datapad, but like talking to the characters and trying to be part of those storylines. Like, there's this whole thing with Gaia and her luggage and whatever. I still don't know what that storyline is or where that leads. There's so many aspects to this that like I feel like I could have chased, but I decided to go different directions. And I don't know. I guess my best advice is to just go for it. And then also on your time off, you know, relax in the sublight lounge and stuff like that, but don't waste your time in your cabin. Like, go, if you don't think, if it's between the hours of like 2 p.m. and 10 p.m., you know, go explore near like the engineering room. Go, you know, there's something happening somewhere and you'll come across a story, and then maybe that's not a storyline that you're on. And like you said, like, you know, maybe you get sucked into a room with Lincoln Mock and the engineering room, and whatever happens, but maybe that will send you in a new direction. Do you know what I mean? Like, maybe it can add up to something. You know, don't waste your, you know, the Halcyon costs a lot of money to be on. You know, don't waste that. You know, go try to find the story.
Yep.
I will say this.
Steven,
one of the coolest moments, you were asking for cool moments. One of the coolest moments was on my second voyage. I was on day 2. I was waiting to get into the engineering room. This was for my meeting with Lieutenant Croy, who had the data tapes that we got on Batu. We had gotten the data tapes onto the Halcyon for him to take over the ship. and we were going to do that whole mission in the engineering room, and we were waiting outside the engineering room with the stormtroopers, and we were waiting for Croy to show up, and Rey, who's on the ship, happens to walk by, and the stormtroopers see her, and I'm like, oh my God, what's going to happen here? So the stormtroopers go after her, and of course she uses the Jedi mind trick to get out of it. And it was like this really cool moment that it felt like it shouldn't. I'm not even sure if that's like a thing that always happens, or like, is that just the out that she has if she ever, the timing wasn't right? Because it seemed like we were like waiting longer than we were to get into that room, and we shouldn't have been waiting outside the room. But it was a cool moment. I can't wait for people to see it because I filmed it in a cool way. But yeah.
That's cool.
Very cool.
That's really cool. Steven, what about you? Cool moment or advice for future Voyagers?
No, I mean, I agree with Peter. I think the interacting with the characters, it definitely helps with your experience. As far as the story goes, I think the data pad stuff kind of helps it along to kind of get you from point A to point B, but interacting with the characters is what really enriches your experience. And I think my favorite moment is still kind of the lightsaber training. Like that's the one that was the coolest moment, where, getting to use the Force and like see it. It was super cool. It just, again, you could get more like emotional in there, and kind of it hits you in the feels. So
yeah, I think that was probably mine too, was the lightsaber training. It's as silly as it looked beforehand, like being in that room, being in that moment, it was just like, it was very emotionally charged. Like everybody in there was feeling the same thing, and that was really cool. But one of the things that we haven't even touched on is costuming. Like if you're that plan A person, that track A person that's like, I'm just here to observe, like, yeah, you don't need to put much effort behind your costuming, but the more involved you want to get, go more involved with your costumes. And I think that's also going to help, because the characters and the crew members are going to see that, oh, this person came to play. And if they see that you came to play, like, they're going to help you. Even if you're not interacting as much maybe as you should be, they're going to help you because you've got on like the full garb and you look like you're ready to go get into missions and steal things or whatever it is you're going to be doing. So that would be my advice, is dress up, go have fun. But I think that is it. Peter, thank you so much for being our first guest on Princess and Scoundrel. It has been so much fun talking to you about STARCREWSER, and I'm sure it will not be the last time. I'm sure I will be talking to you tomorrow again about STARCREWSER.
Yes.
But thank you for being
Thanks for having
here.
me.
Yes.
All right.
Princess and Scoundrel is part of the Thank the Maker network, so make sure you go check out Adam, Ryan, and Nick over at Thank the Maker, and Mike Forrester on Armor Party. They're going to have a lot of good content coming up.
And yes, the STARCREWSER giveaway. We are giving away a Halcyon exclusive lightsaber and so much more. So if you want to participate in this and possibly win, listen to Thank the Maker podcast, Armor Party podcast, the Dano channel on YouTube, and here at Princess and Scoundrel, we're dropping our favorite Star Wars quotes. So you gather all 4 quotes, email them in, and we will announce the winner on May 4th. If you want more details, it's in the description. And thank you so much for hanging out with us for this episode. We really appreciate you being here. And if you could, please consider liking, subscribing, following. It really does mean a lot to help us grow. Until next time.